Hello, and welcome to episode number 30 of the Apostate Alliance with your host, myself, John Peterson, and Faye the Most Gracious. We're joined today by Coel, actually a friend of Faye's, as is usually the case on this show here. I'm amazed at how many people Faye knows. And actually, Faye used to do another show with Coel called Out of the Fold. And Coel says you can still find that on YouTube if you put that into the search engine. Now I've dropped the ball again today, and we're not going to really talk about any news stories right now. Faye was saying last time that there's really not a whole lot going on in the news. Maybe that's because of the time of the year, or maybe because of the COVID going on. But if the COVID is stopping fundamentalist Muslims from doing nonsensical and violent things, then let's keep the COVID around for a while. But
I don't know why that would be something you would wish for.
I don't know. I don't know. I'd be willing to live with the COVID for a while if it kept fundamentalist Muslims from throwing gay people off of roofs. I guess that's what I'm saying. Like some of the horrible stories that we've talked about to open the show up in the past. So since, like we always do, I mean, I'm interested in talking to Coel myself. So usually, like when Faye knows the person, I'll let her just handle the interview on her own. But I'm going to hang around too, because I'm going to have some questions for Coel. But welcome to the show.
Well, when I had put Coel on the list for people we should ask to come on the show, Coel had contacted me and asked me why it was that I had wanted to interview him. And I had told him that it would be the penultimate episode of my former co-host speaking to my current host on what is essentially the same show.
I wasn't going to say it.
Why the penultimate?
Because it's the ultimate show.
Oh, okay. But see, all right. Well, you threw me because penultimate actually means the one before the last one.
Yeah, it's like the second to last one, right?
Right. In other words, I was like, wow, what is
the most significant?
What's Faye trying to tell me here? This is her next to the last show.
Maybe she is trying to tell you that.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Now I'm feeling some
No, I was just under the impression that penultimate meant like the most significant.
It's fine. Whatever it means is fine.
Man,
thank you both for having me. Honestly, this is nice.
Well, no, and I feel kind of proud of that because Faye is what I would term as a wordsmith, and I stumped her on a word she didn't know. That's awesome. When I first interviewed Faye, we talked about like some of her poetry and stories that she wrote that she has online there. But matter of fact, what was that thing you just did? It was like maybe 4 months ago, and you had done the voiceover of something you had written. And then you were kind of like acting it out, but you weren't like you talking was a voiceover.
Yeah, I did a couple of those.
And you were like acting all like emotional and everything, and like I can't remember what that was. I'll have to go back.
I think that was the confessional style one.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. So, all right, but today the show is all about Coel. Coel is a former Quaker, and he spent some time in a Lutheran school. I'm going to have some questions, about, I've never met a Quaker before. All I know is what I've, seen in movies and stuff like that. But
I was going to say that you should lead the interview today.
Well, okay, that's fine by me. Coel, just take a couple minutes and tell us what you want us to know about yourself.
Yeah. So I guess when I was doing the show, I mean, I would always want people to sort of like start from the beginning and kind of lead into where we are now. So I'll try to do the same thing. If I drag, just let me know. But basically, I mean, I was raised Quaker, and I don't come from like a long family line of Quakers. My parents had to like study to become Quakers, and I think that's how they met, if I'm not mistaken. And Quakerism Quakers get sort of lumped into the same category as people like the Amish, because I think maybe because they tend to be in the same areas or something. Like I think they're both pretty common in Pennsylvania, and I don't know. There's just something about that those two groups that seem to go hand in hand in a lot of people's minds. But they're really not anything like them. You can be pretty much anything and be a Quaker. I'm sure there are some Amish Quakers, but Quakerism, as I was raised into it, was derived from Christianity, but they were very open to everybody and everything. So, I mean, there would be Muslims that would come in. There would be, there would be gay people that would come out as gay in the Quaker meeting. And Quaker meeting, I was telling you earlier, John, that basically, like, each religion sort of has its own name for whatever the building is, right? So it's like, temple, mosque, church, whatever. They called theirs meetings, and it was basically just like an old building. And as you go throughout the United States, for example, sometimes there are these buildings that don't have any electricity. Some of them do. But Quakerism itself is not like anti-technology. They're just really big on simplicity. So whatever that means, for example, I mean, they've got email lists and things like that. So it's not like they're against computers. It's not like they have horses and buggies. Although again, I'm sure some do, but it's not like, as far as what I saw about it, there was no like really strict fundamentalist, like old school, no technology type of Quaker. But if somebody did that, that was cool, but it wasn't required. But as I was raised into it, it was about the teachings of Jesus specifically, in terms of doing things like turning the other cheek, helping your neighbor, being, good to the community and good to each other, and very, very, very big on nonviolence, which at face value sounds really good. But the problem that I started to see with it were times when it got to the point of being like self-sacrifice. And the best example that I can give is that my mom went to another country at some point, and she was like almost mugged, and she got the feeling that she was going to get mugged, and then like she got off the train at a certain point, and like whoever she thought was going to mug her left or whatever. I don't know what the whole situation was, but the point was that she came back to it saying that she was terrified about the idea of getting mugged, not because of actually getting mugged, but because she knew that she wouldn't be allowed to defend herself, because Quakerism taught that you weren't allowed to answer violence with violence, or even, do something to hurt somebody else, even if they're trying to hurt you. And I thought that was wrong. Like, I don't think that we all need to go out like attacking each other, but somebody comes after me, like I'm gonna do everything that I can to take them down. Like I got people relying on me.
So the Quaker religion takes that turning the other cheek thing pretty seriously, huh?
So what I was raised into it, yes. But it's just like with any other religion, where there are some people that are super strict about it, and then there are some that are like, where it's like, have you ever met like a Catholic that like really doesn't act religious whatsoever, but then it's like they go to church on Sunday and then confess their sins, and then they're just as sinful throughout the week until the next Sunday. Yeah. I think there are Quakers that are like that. My mom, when I was growing up, my mom died when I was 15. I'm 33, but she died when I was 15, and like in the time that she was alive, she seemed like she was pretty serious about that whole nonviolence thing to a fault. And my dad less so. Like my dad had a shotgun, because my dad was always like, my dad was always the type of person that was pragmatic and realized that nonviolence wasn't going to save his family. So it's like he was willing to sin for the sake of his family, and I appreciated that about him. I thought that was the right view. But eventually I just sort of fell out of it. I stopped wanting to go to meeting, and meeting was boring. Meeting was just like, you would sit in a meeting house for, an hour. There wasn't anybody talking to you. People weren't talking to each other. You just sat there in silence. And what they would say is that, like, if the spirit moved you, then you could stand up and say something, right? And, that's why I was talking about how it's like there would be people that came out as gay, and that was cool. They were like accepted, and people shook their hands and hugged them, and it was nice, But there was just some sort of like culty stuff about it in a way. For example, like you would literally go to like these retreats and they'd call it programming. Like they wouldn't even pretend to not call it something other than programming. They said like you go there and you'd get programmed as a Quaker and come back a stronger Quaker. And I wanted to play violent video games and play physical sports and stuff like that. So as a kid, I mean, that's what sort of took me away from it. Now, as I've gotten older, I just sort of, I just don't consider myself a Quaker anymore, just because like I can't see myself agreeing with all of it in particular. Any like one aspect of it, I wouldn't be able to say that like I agree with that in all situations.
Real quick. Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, but I just wanted to ask a question or two here before we get too far past it, because I'm still absorbing the nonviolence thing. I mean, so like you won't find a Quaker that like if they were to go in the armed forces, they would have to be a conscientious observer, or
conscientious objector. Yeah. So there were a lot of Quakers, or a lot of people that that became Quakers during the Vietnam War as a way of first of all, just not fighting, but also because they were like, well, I'm a Quaker and I don't believe in this war, so therefore I conscientiously object. At the same time, though, I'm sure there are a lot of Quakers that join the military and become doctors, become medics.
Right. Yeah, you can still help out like the soldiers and stuff, but you're just not going to carry a gun and try and kill people as a conscientious objector. The other thing that I want to ask, so if a Quaker did use violence to defend themselves, is that something that they would consider heretical? Like, would there be any repercussions for the person from the religion for doing that?
Not really, because there aren't really these like there aren't really like these high-ranking members of a meeting. There are certainly people that I feel like they called them elders, but I could be wrong about that. I could be getting it conflated with Jehovah's Witnesses. But there were just these people that were like the old school people of the meeting, people that have been part of that meeting for 25 years, and they would take issue with somebody doing that. But at the same time, and we're talking about like 5 people out of an entire meeting of maybe 30 or 40, and chances are a lot of people in that meeting house would be like, yeah, I mean, you got to defend yourself, and at the same time, then they're the more fundamentalists that would have, just sort of ignored them when they came to meeting and pretended that they weren't there.
Wow. As a kid, did you get into any fights in school?
I didn't get into, so I'm 6'2", and I'm like almost 200 pounds. I mean, I'm like a pretty big dude. So it's like, I didn't really get a whole lot of people like messing with me or anything like that. But I had a bully when I was in like 7th grade, I think. And he kept like pushing me over a lot. And I was just like, at the time I was smart enough to just sort of like wait for my opportunity. Right. He kept doing it. And then one day he tried to do it around like a whole bunch of people. And I stood really strong so that he couldn't push me over, and it worked. And then I pushed him over in front of, like 30 people, and, he got humiliated, and he was like, well, I didn't know you had that in you. And I just sort of like walked away. That was really the only time that I ever like got into a fight, but like I knew how to handle it. And my dad thought that it was great that I did that. I don't really remember what my mom thought about that.
So, you had told me before we started, we were talking about, a few things that very early, you said you're 30, what now?
I'm 33.
33, and that you haven't been a Quaker for 20 years. What caused you to set that Quakerism aside?
I didn't agree with it. I didn't. It was a pretty simple thing where, I had friends that, that were playing physical sports, that were showing me violent video games, and I enjoyed that stuff. And as a kid, that's all it took. It just took that and just like being bored in meeting and not wanting to be a part of it, and feeling really held back from doing that stuff that I wanted to be able to do that didn't feel wrong. I didn't want to play violent video games and then go up and, shoot somebody. I just wanted to be a kid, and I'd go to these meetings, and I was pretty hyperactive, and I wanted to be able to just sort of like talk to people and move around. Actually, at the time, I think Christian churches were more appealing to me because they seemed more active. They seemed like there was at least something going on. There was somebody talking, whether I agreed with it or not, about something, rather than just people sort of sitting there. And most of them were significantly older than me, and none of them were my age. So, that, and then, just realizing that I did want to defend myself, that I didn't agree with that view of like total nonviolence 100% of the time. I do believe in being able to defend yourself. Absolutely. So Quakerism and Judaism have one thing in common, where it's that it doesn't matter if you believe in it or not, you're still considered that thing. If you're born Jewish, you're always Jewish, whether you call yourself Jewish or not. Quakerism's the same thing. If you're born a Quaker, then you're always going to be seen as a Quaker to other Quakers. So I haven't considered myself a Quaker for about 20 years. However, I could walk into any Quaker meeting, tomorrow, and they'd be like, welcome back.
Wow. I mean, and so you decided this when you were 13 years old. I mean, many 13-year-olds would have just gone with the flow and, this is what mom and dad are doing, I'm going to just keep doing it. And, there's many people that are Christians now as adults because they, were affected by the indoctrination when they were a child. And here at 13, you're analyzing it and, through your own reason, deciding that you don't agree with it and don't want to do it anymore. I mean, is that just how you were at that age? Were you kind of ahead of your years as far as that goes?
I mean, it's pure luck, man. I'm not really all that intelligent. I happen to be a pretty creative guy and have, my mom, for being a fairly fundamentalist person when it came to Quakerism, was a painter and a stained glass artist. And my dad's a musician. He's a musician in the same way that I'm a musician, where it's like I have a guitar and I play guitar, but we do other things as far as our careers go. But I think being raised in a creative environment, I mean, it's hard to not think about things that are a little bit beyond yourself when you're raised to be creative and by creative people, especially when they're sort of hippie-ish as well. So yeah, I mean, it's I just got lucky. I got lucky because if I had been raised into another family that was exactly like them but maybe wasn't creative, then chances are I wouldn't have thought about it as much as I did. And had I not gone to a school where there were people that were doing things that weren't particularly Quaker, then chances are I would have just again just gone with it and not known any differently. But I happened to be in environments where I was surrounded by other things.
Yeah, that seems to be a key theme in a lot of religions is, don't think about it too much. You might, So we also mentioned at the top of the show, so you decided that you weren't a Quaker, but then you said you also spent some time in a Lutheran school?
Yeah. So I, in the middle of 8th grade, my parents took me out of the school that I was going to, and the school that I was going to was a Quaker school. But I'll be honest. I'm a private school kid, and there are a lot of these Quaker private schools all throughout the country, and a lot of them are really, really respected. Like if you actually look them up, there are a ton of them, and they're really highly respected. Like they're prep schools, and a lot of them prepare people to go to colleges like Ivy League schools. It's crazy. But I wasn't one of those kids, man. Like I wasn't one of those kids that that wanted to do that. I got a lot of respect for people that go to places like Harvard, and it's been something that my dad had to accept, that I didn't want to go to anything other than a couple of years of community college because he went to Princeton. But I got taken out of the one Quaker school that I was going to in the middle of 8th grade. And for years, I actually thought that I got expelled because I plagiarized a paper. And I really thought that I actually got expelled and kicked out of the school. a couple of years ago, my dad told me that he made the conscious choice to take me out of that school because it wasn't good for me. Like I was not succeeding, and it just, the way that they were teaching wasn't good. But the decision that they made as far as where to send me wasn't great. They sent me to this Lutheran school where I had to like wear a uniform all the time. Everybody had to have a certain length of hair and, stuff like that. And it was kind of funny because being raised Quaker, you're actually taught to, you're taught this thing called speaking truth to power, which again was a pretty common saying in like the 60s and the 70s. And a lot of people associated that, and don't quote me on this, but a lot of people associate that with Martin Luther King too. Like I was always raised to appreciate people like Martin Luther King a lot, and I still do. But speaking truth to power was a big thing, and it meant that it meant a combination of like knowing when you're right and standing up for it, and also not being afraid to tell the truth to authority. And I remember when I was at that Lutheran school, I had my perspective of Jesus. I had my perspective of what Jesus was like. And I didn't think that there was a like judgmental bone in Jesus's body. Like I thought that Jesus was all about, like not keeping people away, but bringing people in. Right. And so there was this one time when I was in high school where this teacher in health class, he was talking about, I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland, and Baltimore's got a really big drug problem. And there are these things in Baltimore where you can go to these like government run facilities, and you can trade in your dirty syringes, your dirty like heroin needles for clean ones. And it's a great program because it's super simple. It's just like, they're trying to do anything that they can to keep AIDS away. And it doesn't solve the problem, but it helps, and this health teacher, he was telling the class, and I think it was in like 10th grade, something like that. He was telling the class that he didn't agree with that program because he thought that if you got AIDS from doing heroin with the dirty needle, that you deserved it. And he just like told that to the class, and like, he's wearing a cross and shit. And I was like, this all seems hypocritical to me. Like this all doesn't make sense. And going back a little bit, I mean, he would always talk about how his daughter was doing things that he didn't approve of, but he was thankful for her communication with him. So it's like she told him that like that she like smoked a cigarette once, or that like she smoked weed once, or that she like had a beer, and he was like, well, I never approved of it, but I was glad that she was telling me, right? So I raised my hand and I was like, okay, time to speak truth to power. And I was like, so tell me something real quick. So if your daughter did heroin, you'd want her to use a dirty needle? Or like if she used a dirty needle, you would be okay with that if she got sick from that. It was something like that, right? And he said, I can't answer that question. And I was like, okay, so I'm just not going to listen to this guy for the rest of my time here, because like he doesn't actually believe what he's saying. And that's the kind of school that it was. It was a it was like, it was a school where they had chapel every Wednesday. And there's this one chapel where the religion teacher had a sermon one time that was literally about how if you're gay, you're going to hell. And I'm not gay, got a lot of gay friends just from all the communities that I've been in. I've had a lot of gay friends my entire life. And this was fucking unacceptable, Again, it didn't even seem Christ-like to me. I was like, come on, this is like, Jesus once again was the guy who, like, when there were people outside the church when he was preaching, and there were people inside that believed in him, but there were people outside that weren't sure about him yet. Jesus said, let them in, and you're saying the exact opposite, kick people out. And like, you're telling them that they're going to go to hell. Anyway, that's the sort of school that it was. And I don't know why I was sent to that particular school. But again, I mean, graduated from it 15 years ago. I'm over it, but it was weird. it was a very weird thing. And I think that pushed me further away from religion.
John looks like this wasn't what he was expecting today.
Well, no. And as a matter of fact, I was waiting for a break. I was going to say to anybody who's watching this, and you'll be watching it as a recording on our normal time, that if you're wondering why I'm being so fidgety and moving around, it's because I got my new standing desk a few days ago, and I'm not used to standing up while I'm streaming, and my feet are getting used to it. I started a new program and been walking 2 to 5 miles every day and trying to eat the right things and all that. And I figured, why not stand up when I stream? But
nice.
I noticed you unmuted there. Were you trying to get in, Faye? Did you have a question for Coel, or?
No, I've heard all of the story, so it's kind of difficult to run an interview on it.
Oh, okay, yeah, because you know Coel so well. So, all right. So now you go to that Lutheran school. Is that the school you graduated from, or did you move on to another school from there?
Yeah, I graduated from that school somehow. I honestly don't know how. I think I had like the worst GPA of all time, but yeah, I graduated. And that school definitely pushed me further away from religion rather than actually making me believe in something more. No question.
And did you? So you decided you didn't agree with Quakerism. The Lutheran school certainly, put you off of that.
Yeah.
Did you have any, like, in the interim there where you searched around for like some kind of spiritual meaning or looked at religions that might be better for you, anything like that?
I thought it was either satanic or pagan for a little while, but that was largely because that was while I was in high school. So it was really just because I think I think I took an interest in it because it bothered them at that school so much. But no, I mean, I didn't end up actually believing it. I actually had a friend who joined something that was sort of a cult, OCCULT, not a cult. And she invited me to it once, and I got really uncomfortable about it, and I didn't end up going. So, any interest that I had was swayed pretty quickly by not actually being as into it as I thought it was, and really just being angry.
You're married, right?
I am 7 years.
And you just had offspring. And my question to you is, when you married your wife, did you get married in a church?
No.
Okay.
My wife is Jewish, but she's like what we were talking about earlier, how it's like you're Jewish no matter what. I considered myself agnostic for a while before I actually just decided that I was going to start really thinking about what I believed, and then after doing so, I realized that I didn't believe in anything. My wife was raised Jewish, and she traveled around with different art festivals for a little while, which actually had a lot of pagans in it, which was kind of cool. So it's like there would be these super artsy pagan people doing different things about, whatever it may have been. And so it's like she took a little bit of that. And I liked that. I thought that was cool. We got married just outside of the house that we were living at the time. We both have this strong connection to nature, whether it's religious or otherwise. And that was really what mattered to us. Just sort of being in the world, being among the trees, breathing the air. So yeah, we didn't have a particular religious ceremony beyond the fact that her great aunt, was the one who officiated it, and she's sort of into Wicca. But she was just sort of. It was actually really quick. We got married 2 days after we decided that we were gonna get married. So
wow.
We were just sort of she's there, let's do it. And it was great. Yeah.
Well, there was no breaking of the glass and shouts of Mazel Tov then at your wedding.
No, but that would have been fine. We didn't do that though.
So
that always looked fun.
We were talking a little bit before the stream. Now you were saying that you don't particularly believe in anything now, that you've decided that, I don't know how you would categorize it, but it sounds like the way I feel is that, any claims of there being a God is just pretty much hogwash in my mind. I can't prove that, but that's just how I feel. But you did mention that you don't necessarily identify as an atheist, but just basically as a non-believer.
Yeah, I'd say that I'm non-religious. This might sound lame, but I really like the YouTuber Markiplier, and he was talking about it one time. Somebody asked him if he believes in what he believes in, and he actually said, I don't consider myself an atheist, but I'd say that I'm non-religious. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it too. I went through a pretty I went through a pretty aggressively atheist phase for a little while, where I was like, just anything having to do with God is just wrong, and now I don't feel that way. After doing the show, the point of Out of the Fold was that I wanted to try to humanize people that had left religions, and I feel like I accomplished that, and I really enjoyed that. Faye had one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard about, somebody standing up for what they believe in the face of, a tormenting family. And, I heard these stories a lot. I had a ton of respect for these people that were doing this stuff. But eventually I think I stopped caring about what people believe. I stopped caring about people's religion overall. And I remember that there was one time when I was doing the show where I put on Twitter just a question of how do you define God? And because my thought was that it's like, if you're a really weird type of a connection here, but like, let's say you're like running a rebellion against a kingdom, right? You can define the kingdom. You can say the kingdom is run by this king. You want to stop them from doing this thing. That's it. Like that's what you want, right? People were saying that they didn't believe in God, but they couldn't even define what God was. Religious people had something of a definition for it, and some of them I was like, okay, that's a good definition, whether I agreed with it or not. Some of it was just like, the God of the Bible or the God of the Quran. I'm like, okay, fair enough. Like that's what you got. Some of them were just like, God is the thing that connects us. God is nature. God is math. God is whatever. And I was like, okay, so how many battles are being fought by people over God? And they're talking about a different definition of God, and it bothered me. It bothered me to the point where I was like, if there's some guy who says that they believe in God, but God to them is just peacefulness, or God is just love, or God is like, I'm connected to you somehow, or God is whatever, and it's not associated with anything particularly negative, and like they're successful people, they give back to their community, they're kind to waiters and taxi drivers, that I'm just like, okay, cool, like your view on God is 100% fine. I'm not going to have any issue with this whatsoever. I'm at a point now where I think that religion is a tool, and I think specifically it's an axe, because an axe can be used to do really good things. You can use it to cut down a tree and build a house. And you can use it to murder somebody. I think the people that use axes to murder people are using an axe wrong, just like you would with religion. That's all. And it's like, when I started to see religion like that, or God as just a tool, I started to, like, my view started to change. And rather than actually starting to like believe in something spiritual overall, I just started to see character traits as a lot more important than religion itself.
I like that, though. People kill people in axes. They're using axes wrong.
They are. Yeah, that's all there is to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, is there any reason behind why you don't identify as an atheist? Like, is it just a personal choice, or does it have anything to do with like the stigma kind of attached to atheism, or it's just your personal choice that's not the moniker for you?
I'd like to see myself as being open to anything, although not really believing in anything right now. I'd like to be able to appreciate the art of the Sistine Chapel without thinking to myself, that's beautiful, but there's no God. I just want to be able to say that's beautiful, and that's it, and not have any care about anything else associated with it. I want to be able to go to family and friends weddings and not have to think to myself that we're having this in a church up for a God that I don't believe in. I just don't want to have those thoughts. I don't care about it. I don't honestly care about whether there is a God or not. I care about people. I care about people and what they do to themselves and for others. So I don't consider myself anything associated with theist or atheist. I don't know how to put it. Non-religious is just the best term for what I'd consider myself now.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that identify that way. don't say they're atheists, that they're non-religious, that non-believers, however you want to put it. Like in the fastest growing demographic is what they categorize in the polls they've done as nuns, N-O-N-E-S, that don't particularly follow any religion, but don't necessarily identify as an atheist. So we lost Faye. I'm not sure what happened there. I did DM her to ask her what happened. So take a couple minutes and tell us about the show that you and Faye used to have.
Yeah. So I started out of the fold about 3 years ago, 2.5, something like that. And I started on my own. I just had this idea that I worked in radio for about a year, and I loved it. I got to do some really cool stuff. I was living in New York at the time, and it was a lot of fun. And I wanted to go back to doing something associated with that. I love public speaking. The more the better. I spoke in front of like 12,000 people at one time, and it was one of the biggest adrenaline rushes of my life, and I loved it. And I was like, okay, so I want to do something like that again. And but I was like, podcasts have to be really authentic. And I knew that I wanted to start a podcast, and I was like, so what am I really into? Like, what's something that I can speak from the heart about? And at first, I took an interest in the world of ethical hackers. I've always just thought that what they do is fascinating. People that basically get paid to like rob banks on the cyber side of things. But I got in touch with a bunch of ethical hackers, and they were like, I'm not going to do it. And I was like, okay, never mind then. So I was like, okay, what's the next thing? And religion popped into my head right away, because I was like, I've got a pretty interesting history with religion. And I'd like to sort of get some answers to all this stuff and just listen to people about why they left. And I went on Reddit, and I posted a bunch of stuff and got a ton of responses on like the ex-Christian subreddit. And eventually I moved over to ex-Muslims. And that's how I got led to Faye. Faye came on the show and told me her story, and I was really moved by it and kept interviewing more ex-Muslims. Ended up being a pretty healthy combination of ex-Muslims, ex-Christians, ex-Hindus, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, ex-Mormons. Yeah, it was great. But that's sort of what got me interested in what ex-Muslims have to go through. And that's why I said earlier that like, I'm lucky, I'm lucky that I was in a situation where I was able to, to see that, I didn't agree with Quakerism, and there really wasn't going to be that much of a problem. I don't live in a theocratic country. We sort of hyperbolically say that we do sometimes because in the United States, we're so, there's so many evangelicals that control the vote, but it's nothing by comparison to countries like Iran, So, it's, I really have to associate a lot of what I've been able to achieve exclusively based off of luck and thanking the people around me. But yeah, I got to listen to a lot of people that were ex-Muslim, and eventually Faye became my co-host. I invited her to be my co-host, and I would still do the one-on-one interviews with people. But then she and I would do like a Saturday show where it was a little bit more of just us talking about the news of that week and the podcast that I would release. It was just sort of two people talking and having a conversation. It was great. Until I sort of decided that I couldn't authentically do it anymore, because I couldn't say like 100% that my heart was in it still, with my newfound belief that that maybe religion isn't necessarily the problem.
Well, I mean, it's just that, you could look at a lot of situations where religion's not necessarily the problem. It's just like specific dogma and specific people in certain religions. Like I would say the vast majority of Muslims around the world are just people that want to live their lives and wouldn't begrudge other people living their lives. But then there's that faction of fundamentalists that are in every religion. And I was just, we could talk about how non-believers or atheists are treated in the United States or other westernized countries, but it's nothing compared to some of these fundamentalist Muslim countries. I mean, you can for being a non-believer, you can be killed. There's some Islamic states where you can be imprisoned for not believing.
Agreed.
You
And
know,
I don't mean to take anything away from them, by the way. They should keep doing exactly what they're doing, and I will have their back for it too. But I personally, I would be being dishonest if I was saying that like I 100% think that like Islam is the problem with Muslims, for example. You know, like I think that, but there are people that have been through such horrible shit because of Islam and because of what these countries have done with Islam, that I would never stop ex-Muslims from speaking out in the way that they're speaking out. One of the things that I learned from doing the show was that I'm firmly of the belief now that people leave whatever religion they were in with as much aggression as was put on them when they were in the religion. It's like a rubber band, you know, you pull it back, and as soon as it goes off, it's going to go off with the same amount of, bounce back, whatever you want to call it. So, you know, if you have it shoved down your throat and you see your friends die and things like that, dude, I mean, I would be an idiot to tell those people to shut up about the fact that it's not religion that's the problem. It's like, dude, like let them let it out, man. Let them say what they got to say. And I'll defend their right to say it, and I'll defend them for saying it. But I wouldn't be able to do it all the time or as often as I was doing it, because I think ultimately the goal needs to be to almost make religion not a big deal. And that's like the heaviest blow that you can actually deal to religion, when you actually stop talking about it. And it's like you just sort of, when you make it almost not important, you've actually dealt like a killing blow to religion itself.
Yeah, I mean, I've often said too. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want to eradicate religion. I mean, I think there's certain people that need that, even if you just look at it as like a self-help program or a coping mechanism. I think that there's a lot of people out there that would be crushed and would, maybe be different people if it was shown to them that there is no God and religion's nonsense. I mean, I often get angry or I give blowback to atheists that want to say that religious people who believe in God are, mentally ill in some way, and I say to them, I say to them, look, I only encounter atheists online. Everybody in the real world that I associate with, they all believe in God, and they are certainly not, people with mental health issues. I mean, I said to them, when you make that pejorative claim about all religious people, you're talking about my family.
Right. So, right. Right. Exactly. And one of the other things that I realized as I was doing the show, I had this moment, right, where I was like, okay, I'm online right now. I'm talking on Twitter to a bunch of people, and we're attacking religion and we're defending our lack of belief. And I'm doing so sitting in a house that was probably built by a group of Christians, that's right next to a road, and the roads were paved most likely by Christians. The phones themselves were probably built by a combination of Christians and non-believers. Probably developed by somebody who wasn't a non-believer. But I'm also, at the same time, I'm an IT recruiter. I'm a recruiter for the IT industry. It's a pretty healthy split in IT of people that are religious and non-religious. So like, I can't sit here and say that like I'm not only thankful for religion, but also aware of the fact that religion and religious people have contributed to not only things like, us having food banks and community service, stuff like that, but also just like the basics. If I wanted to completely eradicate religion from my life, I'd have to just like build my own house, live in the woods somewhere. And I don't have time for that. Yeah. Like, I can't do all that. So really the best thing that I can do is create help to create a world where we can all live together. That to me is the best thing of all time. So whether it's Christians, Muslims, atheists, whatever, I believe in conversation. I believe in conversation between people that disagree. I believe in surrounding ourselves with people that we disagree with. I don't believe in living in an echo chamber. I believe in finding people that are Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. I believe in having all different people around us and identifying when we can work together and when we can't. And when we can't, to just not work together. And when we can, to work together until we can't anymore. I think that's the way that the world should work.
Well, and it's, like the way you explain, there's so many things that society has that were, invented and built by people that believe in God, so it's just nonsense to think that they're all delusional or something. I mean,
exactly.
And the thing is you can hold a belief that's not rational or justified, and that doesn't mean that all your beliefs and your entire mind is not rational and justified. I mean, there's people that believe, don't walk under a ladder, or if a black cat,
right.
I mean, but that might, somebody like that could also be like a scientist or, a doctor or whatever. I mean, to just rule people out because they believe in God, I just don't do that. Now, when I first became an atheist, and I have a friend of mine, the guy that runs this channel, same way, when he first became an atheist, he was a bit of an anti-theist,
Mm-hmm.
But he said that rubber band effect, it snaps and, but then the more you learn and the more you realize, like you're saying, I mean, whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, we're all in this together, so.
Exactly. No, so when my daughter was born, she showed up a bit early, and she was born like bluish, right? Like doctors had to basically like suck a whole bunch of like liquid out of her lungs, and it was one of the toughest like 3 minutes of my life. And when she like took her first breath and she like opened her eyes and stuff, it was hard to think of a better word than miracle. And like I was like, and I wanted to, and I was so glad that at that time that I had the belief that I have now. That's not that, like the word miracle and referring to her as like a blessing didn't have the same connotation to me as when somebody says that and they are religious, but like I like the words. I like the words in this context. And I'd like to be able to say them and think them and feel them without also needing to say that's not really what it is. They're fine. They're totally fine. I believe in being free to think and feel whatever it is that you think and feel, and being able to discover whatever it is that's out there. And I don't want to limit myself. And that's, I don't know what. That's why I think that like it's kind of hard to call myself whatever anything anymore. But non-religious seems to fit the best because it doesn't stop me from being able to appreciate something.
I mean, you talk about the vernacular. I have been an atheist for over 20 years, and I still say, catch myself saying, "Oh my God," or
I say "Oh my God" all the time.
Yeah,
I love Jesus Christ as a swear word.
And like, or somebody, I've even, somebody sneezes, "Oh bless you," I mean,
all the time.
It's in there. It's in your head.
Yep.
I mean, like we've talked about, I guess the guests on this show, and I've asked the question, is there anything that you miss about, when you were a Quaker, when you did believe?
I haven't been a part of a community that big, or like ever since, basically, so I guess it would be nice to be a part of a community like that again. But at the same time, that community was of a bunch of people that I didn't really agree with, and that definitely weren't my age and were at very different stages of their lives than I was. So, I don't, I miss the idea of what it could have been, but it wasn't real anyway.
Well, and I mean, it's kind of the answer I give to that question is like, I miss like the fellowship part of it. Like, It was always fun to see everybody on Sunday. And then oftentimes, a few times a month, there would be like a potluck dinner down in the basement afterwards. And that was always fun. So, but yeah, it's hard to, you might miss something like that, but it's hard to say you would go back just for that because, you don't believe in all the other stuff, so what is going on in your life now as far as, like, you had that show with Faye? Are you still doing anything on the YouTubes or the internet or anything like that?
Not really. No. I go by a different moniker on Twitter that I'd rather not share. I just sort of, I think it'd be kind of funny if people know that sometime that they're talking to somebody that they might be talking to me or they might not be. Yeah, I mean, I still take a sincere interest in what people are doing from the fundamentalist side of things, whether it's fundamentalist Christianity, fundamentalist Hinduism, fundamentalist Islam, and like the culty type of stuff. I still take a profound interest in cults. I think they're fascinating. The stuff that's going on with Trump right now is especially culty to me. Trying to communicate in a what's the word? In just sort of like a reasonable way, where we're trying to just sort of find common ground with people that believe in the QAnon stuff has been a real challenge. But I really, really want to find common ground with these people. So, I'll do stuff like that, where, like, I try to consciously find people that I disagree with, and have conversations with them that allow us to share what we believe without also having to say that having to concede something that we don't want to concede. Like, I don't think we all need to agree with each other, but I do think we need to find things that we can work together on.
Yeah, there's certain people it's kind of hard to find common ground with them, but it boggles my mind that evangelicals support Trump so much, because he's he's just such an abysmal human being, and he seems to be antithetical to anything that evangelicals believe. Have you ever heard of Matt Powell?
Name sounds familiar, but no, I can't put my finger on it.
He's a Christian apologist that's on YouTube, and matter of fact, on this channel that your interview is going to appear on, The Rage, yesterday and today, we've been reviewing his new movie called The Atheist Religion. And he did this movie a few years back called Science So-Called, like, because he's a evolution denier and all this stuff. But it's just crazy that there's people out there that just deny science, and then people that deny science and believe in what they call this loving God, and then they follow Donald Trump, who is just, like, what he's been doing since the election's been over, it's sedition. The idea that a president would be going around doing what he's doing, and trying to delegitimize the voting process is just, I've never seen anything like it in this country before.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying. I don't necessarily consider myself, like, specifically a Democrat or a Republican. I've got views that are both, but, like, obviously I'm pro gay rights. I'm pro women's rights. I have a daughter, and it's hard for me to see how any parent could be anti-feminist or not pro-feminist if they have a daughter. Like, how could you not want her to have the best possible life? Absolutely boggles my mind. But at the same time, I'm pro-gun. And I know that there are liberals also that are pro-gun. Yeah, there are absolutely liberals that are pro-gun. Like, no question about it whatsoever. However, I do think that I agree a little bit more with Republicans on the gun side of stuff, but not all the time. And I want to be really clear about that. That, like, a lot of my views on most things change based off of the situation, and it's not in, like, a chameleon type of way. It's just like, I learned something new, and I change my view. So who knows? But the point is that.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go ahead. What were we going to say?
Well, no, I was going to say. I could say similar, because, like, what I've always said is, you might fall somewhere on the spectrum, as an aggregate score of what you believe. But that's what I am. I'm liberal of an aggregate score, because just like
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
right?
Okay,
Because,
that fits. That
yeah,
fits.
just like you, there's things from the other side. I agree with you on the gun thing. Yeah, there has to be common sense gun control, but in my mind, and I've said this to people, is people being able to have guns, unless you change the Constitution, is sacrosanct because it's in the Constitution. It says, so you'd have to like change the Constitution if you wanted to utterly get rid of them. And then also, like, another thing that would maybe put me more on the right, or something I agree with the right on, is I think the idea of hate crimes is sheer nonsense. Okay, because to me, that's like you're setting yourself up to be the mind police. I mean, if somebody murders somebody, if somebody blows up a building or whatever, there are already laws against that and penalties for that. And now you want to add to it, well, what was their motivation behind doing it? Like, I never understood that. So
I think there has to be like really specific stuff to prove that somebody, like, for example, so like if we're talking bluntly about like what I think a lot of people think of when they think of a hate crime, it's that like a white person kills a black person because he's black, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So like I think I think in that regard, there has to be a lot to like prove that that white person was racist and wanted to kill that black person specifically because he was black. I think that's what it is. I think it's just like, I think it's not enough in a court of law specifically. I think it's not enough when you just see white person kill black person. I think that that's not necessarily specifically a hate crime, but I think that when they can prove a hate crime, it's when they can, the guy's got manifestos, or the guy puts stuff on social media saying racist stuff.
Well, right. And I'm not necessarily disregarding that type of evidence. What I'm saying, though, is if murdering someone is wrong and there's penalties for it, what difference does it make why they did it? You know what I mean? Why should there be like an extra penalty? Because killing a person is bad enough. You know what I mean? Murdering someone is that's pretty damn bad. But at any rate, you say you're not really doing anything on the YouTubes anymore. You mentioned earlier that you're a musician. Do you play out anywhere?
No, not really. I'm really into programming right now. I do. I've been learning Python for a while. It's a programming language associated with a few different things. I don't really like web development, but I love what hackers do, and like ethical hackers, people that literally get paid to do this sort of stuff legally. So I've been taking some like online courses on stuff like that, and there's something about it. It works with the way that my brain operates. I wish I had started doing this like 20 years ago. So that's really where a lot of my mental energy goes when it's not around being a dad. Honestly, I love being a dad. This has been incredible. That's really been what I've focused on a lot.
This is your first child?
I have a son with my ex, but he mostly lives with my ex, so I don't have nearly as much time with him as I do with my daughter.
The brand new daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I got to see her, folks. You missed out. He showed her to me and Faye. Beautiful, beautiful baby. And we lost Faye a while back. I'm not sure what happened to her out, but everything's okay. I DM'd her and haven't heard back yet. Probably connectivity issues. I'm sure she didn't leave on purpose because her buddy Coel was here. But I guess that's where we'll leave it. We kind of got away from Cole's story there and talking a little politics and shit, but that we do that often on this channel. Not necessarily on the show, but it was very nice talking to you, Coel. And I see a lot of things that we, as far as ideas and stuff that we might have in common. And I'm so glad that Faye suggested that we interview you. I never had talked to a Quaker before. And the thing that blew my mind most about it is like that nonviolence thing, not even in self-defense. Like I wasn't aware that.
Well, so like I want to state that, I mean, that was my mom, and there were certainly people there that were very much of that belief, but I don't want to generalize or make any particular group like look better or worse, strictly based off of my experience.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's it wasn't an uncommon belief. And I have spoken with some Quakers since that have basically just said that like they don't ignore that, but they, you know, they would accept it if they had to like hurt somebody in order to survive, you know, but but when they go to meetings, it's like when they talk about nonviolence, they talk about nonviolence as being the way to be. But you know, when push comes to shove, you know, they would protect themselves.
I mean, you can still be anti-violent but still protect yourself if you're being attacked. I mean, but you know, I noticed that you talking to you reminded me of, I remember like in different movies and stuff, the Quakers are always portrayed that way as not like, I don't know if you've ever, the Harrison Ford movie Witness, and he was with in a Quaker community, and somebody was messing with the Quakers and they were just letting them hit them and throw stuff at them and stuff like that.
I've never seen that. I'll have to check that out now.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar.
Yeah, it was quite a while ago. I think it might have been from the 80s. And yeah, I'm just remembering a scene from that where he first goes to the Quakers and he's amazed that like these locals are messing with the Quakers and, you know, pushed them, and somebody smushes an ice cream in the guy's face or something. They don't do anything about it. And Harrison Ford was just like, what? But
yeah.
So at any rate, thank you so much for being here. And, you know, whoever's watching this right now, you're watching it as a recording. And just remember, as we say, the Apostate Alliance is where you can be free to not believe. We'll see you next time.